The Heavenly Demon. Can't Live a Normal Life. By Sanchin. Chapter 8. Change. Part 1. Viscount Lawrence's office. A meeting was being held there for quite a while. What are the movements of the Barco family? I think they made a decision. According to recent information, the Barco family commissioned the Golden Bank to get a large loan. The only thing the Barco family, who has no special source of income, could be preparing for is war. We need to make sure to secure skilled mercenaries before they can recruit all of them. Now, war is only a matter of time. Who? At the words of Doppler, a family vassal and a strategist, Viscount Lawrence could not hide his troubled expression. To think it would end in a war. It was a year ago. The conflict had started back then. Lawrence and other families were located in the northeast of the Kingdom of Cairo, but there was not much land for farming due to the mountainous nature of the country. At least Lawrence had a lot of fertile lands compared to other estates, and it was even said that most of the crops produced in the northeast came from Lawrence. Then one day, the Barco family presented them with a document. It turned out that the ancestors of the Lawrence family were in debt to the Barcos, and fertile land was at stake as collateral. Due to this, a conflict between the two families began. Being the Viscount of Lawrence, he insisted that he could not fulfill the promise of the document as it couldn't be accurately authenticated. In contrast, the Barco family insisted on the document's authenticity and tried to pressure Lawrence. In fact, even back then, Viscount Lawrence didn't think the situation would get as bad as it was now. The authenticity of the documents of the Barco family was unclear, but the problem was that a relative of the Barco family occupied a place in the central government. Due to that, the rights of the Barco family were eventually recognized. At the choice of either paying off a huge debt or giving up the land, the Lawrence family locked their doors and raised their voices of protest. However, even then, the trouble was not resolved. Now, there was only one way to solve this problem. War. The Barco family prepared for war. Lawrence had heard several conversations about them, and now he even heard rumors that they had borrowed money from the Golden Bank. Doppler said, "War is now inevitable. If the Barco family's request is accepted and the family pillar is to be pulled out at the roots, it is better to be prepared for war and fight a desperate struggle. Fortunately, Miss Flora will marry Roman Dmitri of the Dmitri family. Although Dmitri is originally from a family of commoners, isn't he now a rich man known throughout the Northeast? I don't know how much the Barco family borrowed from the Golden Bank as collateral, but I seriously doubt they have more money than the Dmitri family." That's probably right. Only because of that, I sent my sole daughter to Dimitri's fool. Lord, it was a decision for Lawrence. You have made the right decision as a lord, so you need not blame yourself. I know. However, his expression was different from his answer. Thinking about the future of her daughter, Flora, his heart was broken. The moment we give the land to Barco, our family is over. Different families will try to bite us from all sides. This is the right decision for my daughter as well. The moment the status of the family falls, the future of the beauty that everyone admires is bound to be hopeless. At least if she gets married in a situation where the family is strong, my daughter will be treated well even in Dmitri." He swallowed the pain. This was reality. There were times when he had to make a decision, even though he knew it would be painful, just in order to solve the problem in front of him. The meeting soon finished. After the marriage with Dmitri takes place, we will get mercenaries and prepare for war. No matter how strong Barco was in the northeast, Dimitri's support could never be ignored. However, it was then. Bam. ****. The door swung open. Lord. There is a big problem. A soldier walked past Flora and stormed into the office. The news he delivered to Viscount Lawrence was genuinely shocking. Is that really true? Yes. He couldn't believe it. Roman Dmitri. It is said that there is no silkworm under the hood, but rumor has it that Roman was even worse than a typical supremacist bastard. But then, how did he get rid of Blood Fong? It didn't make any sense. First of all, it's hard to believe that Roman had enough power, and even then, Blood Fong was an organization whose base had not yet been revealed. If it had been an organization whose identity could be revealed so easily, Blood Fong would not have survived until now. He asked the soldier in detail. He wanted to know from start to finish just what exactly the soldier had seen. When young Master Roman Dmitri visited the estate, nothing special happened. He was promised to marry Miss Flora, so I allowed him to enter the estate without any questions. However, it was about an hour later. As I was returning to my quarters for a shift, I witnessed Roman grabbing a man's hair and dragging him away towards Lawrence Square. Later, he revealed that that man was the leader of Blood Fong, Ben Miles. I don't know what happened between Roman and the Blood Fong, but Roman dragged the leader of the Blood Fong in front of the people of Lawrence and finally executed him. It was beyond common sense. It was unbelievable. The execution of the leader of the Blood Fong was definitely something to be proud of and glad of. However, the situation was not so simple. Even though Roman was Flora's fiancé, he acted hastily while dealing with Blood Fong on Lawrence's land. Just as Viscount Lawrence expected, Doppler said sternly, "This is a murder. Committed without the permission of the Lord, the owner of Lawrence. This is an issue that cannot be overlooked." A resolute voice. Viscount Lawrence's expression turned complicated. A problem with an order? Right now, that wasn't important. It's his own future son-in-law. He wanted to see the face of Roman Dmitri, who was said to have dealt with Blood Fong single-handedly. Call Roman Dmitri right now. I will see him face to face and hear the circumstances of this incident. It wasn't long before Roman was brought in. Lawrence's guards were securing Roman's troops, so he showed up in the office as soon as he was called. Roman was not alone. Viscount Lawrence showed a sign of disappointment as he walked along with the Dmitri Knight's commander, Jonathan. As expected, this case was not a problem that an individual could solve. Judging by the fact that the commander of the Knights of Dmitri was following along, it seemed that Blood Fong had been dealt with his help. I, Roman Dmitri, greet Lord Viscount Lawrence. Forget the formalities. Explain to me in detail. Why the hell did you come all the way to Lawrence to do such a cruel thing? A sharp and straightforward question. Nevertheless, Roman's expression remained calm. There was no tremor in his voice, even when those around him were staring at him. To explain the situation, I need to go back a few days from now, to the beginning of the problem. The Blood Fong members were persecuting the innocent citizens of Dmitri, so I executed them on the spot. Then, Blood Fong eventually came after my life. I attacked them after luring them in on purpose and later decided that I couldn't leave them like this. That's the whole story of what happened in Dmitri. After hearing that Blood Fong had a central base in Lawrence, I rushed here and executed the leader, Ben Miles. What I want to ask is who gave you the right to do such a thing in Lawrence? You have no right to execute anyone here. I know. Rights. They were important. It was just for a cause, and even Roman had no intention of crossing the line. However, that was until he dug up Blood Fong's information and confirmed one fact. But I had my doubts about whether I should be the one to punish Blood Fong in Lawrence properly. Ben Miles is not a faceless figure. He was not identified as the leader of the Blood Fong, but he was quite famous in Lawrence for all kinds of charges. However, how did Lawrence deal with it? I was on guard. Although Ben Miles has been caught in several incidents, he has been released on massive bail on several occasions. So I just made a decision. I didn't believe in Lawrence's method, so I had to do it my own way. How dare this guy? Young master. He was making extremely bold remarks. Doppler shouted, hardening his face, and Jonathan stopped Roman in embarrassment. The opponent is Viscount Lawrence. A Viscount family is higher than the Dmitri family. However, even with such a person in front of him, Roman did not admit his guilt but showed that he believed he was right. Roman said, "To be honest, I was a little disappointed. I thought you would congratulate me for dealing with blood Fong, but I didn't know that you would punish me for a problem with the procedure of things. I solved the blood Fong problem that was being discussed as a problem not only in Lawrence, but in the whole Northeast area. I put my own life at risk to solve the problem while Lawrence was sitting around. I ask you, Viscount Lawrence. Did I really do something wrong? Viscount Lawrence's expression hardened. He saw Doppler. Is that true? What are you talking about? Ben Miles is a known figure. I asked if that was really true. Doppler was stunned. Ben Miles. He knew it too. I didn't know he was the leader of Blood Fong, but he was so notorious that I remember hearing his name. Doppler started murmuring his response in hesitation. Seeing this, Viscount Lawrence was sure that no more questions were needed. Viscount Lawrence's gaze turned to Roman, who was looking at him. I will not take this issue any further. Although you don't have the right to execute anyone in Lawrence's land, this wouldn't have happened if we had done things right in the first place. In this regard, we will compensate separately later. Thank you. Then, you may go. Yes. Roman bowed his head. Jonathan, who had seemed to be walking on thin ice until just now, hurriedly followed Roman and left the office. The moment they left and the door closed. Clack. Ha, I took a solid blow. That guy is really Roman Dmitri, right? Viscount Lawrence. A smile bloomed across his face. Like father, like son. Looking at Roman's dignified attitude, Viscount Lawrence evaluated him from the perspective of his son-in-law. Right. It is natural for a man to have such courage. An heir that got blood on his hands for the sake of his citizens. Who the hell is calling that guy a fool? He is a badass man. Laughter came out. Roman's words were sophistry, and he should have been punished. Still, he didn't punish him. Thinking that a man like Roman would be his future son-in-law, a bond formed that he didn't know yet existed, and he couldn't stop smiling. His eyes were looking straight at me. A dignified attitude. He was so fucking cool. When he heard that he was called Dimitri's fool, he imagined a miserable image, but when he saw him in real life, he was totally different. However, my lord, you cannot overlook this incident. Where would something like this not be allowed? He's going to be Flora's husband soon. In order for a man to do big things, he needs that kind of determination and attitude. And he didn't kill innocent civilians either. Since he has dealt with the blood Fong problem that has been tormenting us for so long, wouldn't it be right to congratulate him as he said? However, let's overlook this situation. I'm in a good mood. Roman will be a great fit for Flora. He was excited. Earlier, an arranged marriage with Dmitri broke Viscount Lawrence's heart. But now, he was on cloud nine. Flora. He wanted to see his daughter. He wanted to tell her what a great man Roman was. Call Flora right now. However, he didn't know back then that the marriage of two families was, in fact, already over. Chapter 9. Change. Part 2. At first, she didn't know what was going on. Flora grabbed the soldier coming out of the office, and only after talking to him did she get to know what had happened in Lawrence. Oh my god. Blood Fong. A faction called a heinous criminal group even in Lawrence. At one time, the noble families made a move to wipe them out but eventually gave up because they were determined for revenge. So, for Flora, blood Fong remained a problem that couldn't be solved. As long as you don't touch them, they won't cause you any problems, so I tried to stay away from them as much as possible. Roman said he would deal with them the day I talked about breaking the engagement. Because he took on the responsibility of breaking up by himself, Flora unwittingly tried to stop Roman. However, we are strangers now. So, I will take care of my own business. Roman drew a line. Since the bond of arranged marriage has been broken, they have clearly stated that they should not get involved in each other's lives. Flora was stunned. I was angry, but my partner didn't understand. Is this his last remaining pride? Is he not being nice to me because I wanted to break off the engagement? Will he feel better after treating me this way? I had a lot of thoughts. Of course, I didn't think Roman would put what he had said into action. However, you really took care of the blood fong. What I thought was absurd became a reality. What others would not have dared to do, Roman had done in just a few days. This didn't make any sense. Dimitri's fool? That was a false rumor. Even if Knight's commander, Jonathan, had helped, the person she met and experienced wasn't a fool. He knew how to take responsibility for his actions, and he also kept his word on what he said he would do. And if he had personally killed Ben Miles, the leader of the Blood Fong, the rumor that he could not even wield a sword was also highly likely to be false. Why? Could Roman have kept his mouth shut to escape the world's evaluations? If she truly knew what kind of man Roman was even a little earlier, Flora would have made an effort to get to know Roman better. It was too late to regret. The cup had already spilled, and now, Flora was called by her father. Her father suddenly started praising Roman Dimitri. I don't know what happened in his office, but her father's face clearly showed that he was in awe of what Roman did and had taken a liking to Roman. We decided to break up the engagement. Flora's words. For Viscount Lawrence, it was out of the blue. Flora. She was Viscount Lawrence's princess. He was extremely protective of her. She was the daughter he had raised all his life dearly, but he could not tolerate her this time. You already announced the breakup? Viscount Lawrence got up from his seat. Flora's heart raced at her father's anger, whom she had never seen before, and he struggled to express his thoughts with a calm face. Yes, father. The last time I visited Dimitri's estate, I expressed my intentions to Roman. I also wanted to do things for my family according to your will, but no matter how much I thought about it, marrying someone I can't respect. Flora. I thought you were a smart kid. But, this is not it. He interrupted her speech. Unlike usual, he didn't want to listen to her daughter. I have already told you how serious our land situation right now is. Now, the Barco family has borrowed a large sum of money from the Golden Bank to prepare for war against us. Did you make that choice knowing what that meant? There is no longer any compromise with the Barco family. They will bring us to our knees for this matter and take everything in the name of a good cause. It's not just about gold and silver. Our land, our honor, and even you, Lawrence's flower. It means taking it all away. Lawrence is not weak. Even if it's Barco, isn't it impossible to win? Right. If it was only the Barco family who had come forward, it would have been possible. The problem is that the central government approved the document, even if its authenticity was not confirmed, and the Golden Bank lent money to the Barco family without any special collateral. This is not just a battle between two families. The forces that lent power to the Barco family will create a battle in which we have no choice but to lose, even for their own benefit. Flora's eyes shook. She was smart. She was called gifted from an early age and boasted of her brilliance enough to finish her academy course early. However, that was only her academic knowledge. Neither the academy nor the library showed her the cold reality, as there was no way she could learn that from books. She thought Lawrence had nothing to lose, but the reality she believed in was far from real. Viscount Lawrence said an arranged marriage with the Dimitri family was an unavoidable choice. From the family located in the northeast, they were the only family who could add the power and forces to solve the Barco family's evil intentions, so your father asked for your permission. I asked if you could sacrifice yourself for the family crisis. Of course, it would have been difficult for you to refuse, but if you had still refused back then, I wouldn't have been as angry as I am now. It's a matter of choosing the marriage partner you like from among other prestigious families, so you must have taken a step back. However, this is different. Previously, you were the flower of Lawrence that everyone admired, but now you have left a scar with the choice of breaking a marriage. Other families will try to keep an eye on this situation, as it would be very risky to marry you under the current circumstances. The world of power. In that world, choices often come at a great price. Lawrence, who had gained the help of Dmitri through the arranged marriage, lost what they gained because of the breakup. Just a while ago, Viscount Lawrence met Roman. He was a good guy. His eyes were sharp, and he was a man with an attitude that did not waver even in front of a viscount. And seeing how he handled blood fong for the citizens, his own people seemed to be particularly fond of him. Due to all of this, he was in a good mood. He was in a good mood, even if it was an arranged marriage. The sole reason was that he discovered that Roman wasn't a fool like the rumors said. Lawrence had no other option, so he felt that the arranged marriage was not bad. However, the cup has already been spilled. Due to that, everything they had prepared to face the Barco family became useless. In the past, the Barco family asked us to get in an arranged marriage. Perhaps they coveted our fertile land. Back then, I flatly refused. No matter what advantage they gave us, the eldest son of the Barco family had many women, which made me refuse the proposal. And if we lose this war, you will not be a part of Dmitri, but a woman of the Barco family. That's the reality. At least before the war, you were in a position where you could choose your husband, but now, things are completely different. Reasons for the arranged marriage. The reason why I had no choice, even though that decision broke my heart. Because the opponent is Barco. Knowing what it meant to be defeated by those who had been targeting Lawrence for a long time, Viscount Lawrence accepted the reality. Flora's heart sank. The way she sees it. There were no such stories in that world. What were Barco's intentions, and what would be gained by marrying into the Dmitri family? She was naive. Because she had a pure heart in a cruel world, she chose to break up, not knowing what the outcome would be. But now, she faced the cold reality. Viscount Lawrence took in his breath. Of course, there was still time to pick up the spilled water. Take some time to think about what mistakes you have made. I will make an appointment with Dmitri again, and I will try to undo the breakup. My daughter, we are aristocrats. We are not in a position to worry about our daily lives like common people. This is a position that has much more responsibilities than them. So, please pray that this problem will be resolved. If Dmitri rejects our offer this time, our chances of winning the war against the Barco family will be extremely slim. Fortunately, the breakup was not yet known to the public. The only way to avoid mistakes is to do something right away. Viscount Lawrence left Flora in her shocked state and left her at the office. There was a lot of work to be done from now on. At the same time, Roman left Lawrence with the Dmitri Knights. They were moving. Knight Commander Jonathan looked at Roman's appearance. Is this really the young Master Roman I know? Roman. From what he knew, Roman wasn't born with enough confidence to look straight at Viscount Lawrence. Along with that, all the things he did concerning the blood fong. It was seriously questionable. He hadn't really talked to Roman, but now he couldn't stand his itchy mouth. Young master, was it really necessary to provoke Viscount Lawrence like that? I'm glad he didn't take it seriously, but if Viscount Lawrence had been angry, even the young master wouldn't have been able to escape punishment. At the place where he was being reprimanded, Roman rather criticized his opponents. Jonathan was so startled back then that he almost tried to stop Roman. Was there a need to? Roman laughed. A need? There wasn't. It was best to solve it on the spot, but he deliberately changed his attitude in the atmosphere of reprimanding himself. Lawrence is not free from responsibility in this case. Their negligence allowed the blood fong to exist, and as a result, the people of Dmitri's estate were harmed. So, I was just pointing out the facts. The fact that they have no right to reprimand me on the spot. Even if things weren't the same, Viscount Lawrence wouldn't have punished me. Judging by the atmosphere, it seemed that he did not know the fact of the breakup yet, and he would not make stupid judgments to punish his soon-to-be son-in-law. Roman behavior. It wasn't a reckless act. Roman was judging the situation, and he uttered enough remarks to handle. Our families don't even have proper communication between us to inform them of the breakup. Do you still think that I will need to ask for forgiveness from them? I took care of a problem that they couldn't. If I was going to get anything, it would be praise and not punishments. A confident attitude and along with a confident voice. At that moment, Jonathan became sure. The young master has changed. Roman Dmitri. He wasn't the fool he used to be. Roman arrived at his home. He immediately immersed himself in the bathtub and flushed the blood from his body with warm water. Even in my new life, my fundamentals do not change. I killed a person. Actually, he killed at least dozens. Blood Fong was slaughtered like that, but he felt no guilt for them. It was necessary. Roman, no, Baek Jung-hyuk. He lived in a world of survival of the fittest. If he showed the weakness of hesitating when he had to kill someone, Baek Jung-hyuk's life would have ended when he was young. So, if he makes a decision, he must act. If anyone were blocking his road, he would cut them down without any hesitation and, if necessary, torture them in many cases. That was Baek Jung-hyuk's life. Nothing changed when he became Roman. If there was someone that showed their murderous intent, eliminating them with whatever means necessary was the way of Baek Jung-hyuk's life. If the same thing happens again in the future, Roman will make the same judgment. Whether the opponent is the remnants of Blood Fong or someone stronger than them, Roman will always live a life as a predator by devouring those who oppose him. Young Master Dmitri, Lord Dmitri is calling you. It was when he finished taking a shower. At Han's words, Roman changed into clean clothes and started walking. Soon, he arrived at the office. However, Baron Romero, who he thought would criticize his reckless move, looked at him with a dazzling gaze. An expression that cannot hide his great anticipation. Baron Romero asked, "So, you dealt with Blood Fong just by yourself?" Jonathan was standing next to him. Right, he must have told him the situation. The meaning of the question was clear. Romero Dmitri, as the father of his son, not the Lord of Dmitri, couldn't hide his excitement after discovering that his son had finally changed for the better. Chapter 10. Change. Part 3. I couldn't believe it at first. Roman. Did he deal with Blood Fong himself? Baron Romero would have thought the other person was insulting him if it wasn't for the Knight's commander, Jonathan. I don't know how to explain this situation, but one thing is for sure, young Master Roman seems to have changed. He executed Ben Miles, the leader of the Blood Fong, in front of everyone. And even when he met Viscount Lawrence, he showed an attitude of proudly explaining what he had done and why he had done so. That was not the young Master Roman I knew before. Jonathan is not a liar. Baron Romero, who had heard of the situation, gained hope for his eldest son, whom he had given up on. Did Roman really change? Romero's 3 sons. Among them, Roman was a sore thumb. Roman experienced a time when he was a commoner like himself, so he was a crooked child trying to take care of himself. It hurts my heart to look at him. A long time ago, Baron Romero was working hard to secure the tunnels of the iron mines by putting in a great deal of his workforce. It was such an important task that it would have taken Baron Romero's entire lifespan to finish, but at one point, he worked so hard that he lived in an iron mine all day. Roman was only 3 years old at that time. Roman, unable to walk, crawled over to his father and gave him a small cookie. I still remember how cute it was. Baron Romero, whose face had turned black due to the tunnel work, hugged Roman with a big smile. Maybe that was why he wanted Roman to live a happy life. Unlike the other 2 sons, he didn't know how to do anything properly, so he gave him a lot of pocket money, hoping that he wouldn't be looked down on anywhere. He didn't know that it would become the start of the problem. Roman resolved the grievances that had accumulated in his heart with luxury, and then Dimitri's fool was born. Baron Romero was an inexperienced father. Although his son was not the best, the marriage with Flora Lawrence was a gift for Roman. However, now it's changed. He had no choice but to be happy. The process didn't matter. Even if Roman had hired people to bring down the Blood Fong with his own money, it was important to Baron Romero that Roman took the lead in doing something. Baron Romero was ready to dedicate himself to his son at any time if his son showed him the slightest good change. "I greet you, father. Roman." He showed his face. It was hard to believe that a terrible incident had just happened because his expression was so calm. He knew instinctively. Roman has changed. His gait, his attitude, and his expression, those things alone made him realize that his son had changed. No, he may have anticipated the current situation from the moment he raised his voice proudly against himself. "So, you dealt with Blood Fong by yourself?" He blurted out those words. Even though he knew it instinctively, Baron Romero hoped to ascertain the truth from Roman himself. The answer to the question is simple. Yes or no. Telling the truth is good enough. He doesn't need to think about it, and if he tells the truth about what he's been through, this case will be resolved naturally. His father's trust. Roman could gain a lot from this. However, exceeding expectations will come back to hit me just like a boomerang. Baron Romero's expectations for Roman were literally zero. However, if a person who would be amazed by even seeing one good result saw 10 good results at the same time, it would be a tremendous event for them. This would have a huge effect on his future as well. What should I do? Should I reveal myself or should I hide my capabilities? In Murim, showing off your talent is extremely dangerous. If he showed such prodigious talent, he would inevitably end up getting his head crushed by a hammer. Only 1 in 10,000. People who survived the attention of those around them were called masters in Murim. I have not yet fully grasped this world. The guy named Roman Dmitri possessed an insignificant force like an ant compared to when I was Baek Jim-hyuk, and exposing myself too much would not be good for my safety. What I need now is time to be aware of this reality and grow up enough. Dimitri's reputation as a fool is very appropriate to buy time. Pfft. Laughter came out. A rational judgment. He knew what was right, but from the first confrontation with Blood Fong, such a premise meant nothing. I will reveal myself. Roman didn't know how to hide it. Yes, I did. The heavenly demon, Baek Jim-hyuk, was a person who could not live a normal life. Everyone had a period when their parents protected them. But Roman, no. Baek Jim-hyuk was different. When Baek Jim-hyuk gained some strength to move his body, he was left on the cold cave floor. While he was inside a dark cave, Baek Jim-hyuk's father said, "You are the son of the heavenly demon. If you are truly worthy as my successor, prove yourself from the cold bottom and survive. Listen carefully, I have 12 sons. If one of you dies, nothing will change, and even if all 12 of my sons die, I will just create another son. So, remember this. Domination is the only way to prove your worth to me." The 12th son. The life of Baek Jim-hyuk, the youngest of the 12, began like that. He was desperate. The children who lived together in the cave did not take care of each other because they were the sons of the heavenly demon, and they lived a life of brute force, competing by stealing each other's things. At that time, Baek Jim-hyuk was very weak. His dwarf physique made it difficult to win in competition with others, but Baek Jim-hyuk instinctively knew what to do. To reveal his presence. He knew that even though his strength was weak, he could reign if he inflated his body greatly and showed malice to others. And just like that, Baek Jim-hyuk smashed the head of the strongest child with a stone. Blood was dripping from the stone as it was struck several times, and the children around him looked at Baek Jim-hyuk in surprise. The king of the 12 sons. At that moment, Baek Jim-hyuk's position was decided. Baek Jim-hyuk always revealed himself and survived to the end despite numerous threats. The heavenly demon was born through adversity. If he hadn't walked the thorny path, Baek Jim-hyuk knew he would not have ascended to the throne of the heavenly demon. There is no such thing as perfect preparation in the world. In the reality I know, it is only important to prove myself to the best of my ability. In the new life of Baek Jim-hyuk, his interests were familiar and far from ordinary. But did he want his new life to be normal? That's funny. The life he has lived previously has made Baek Jun-hyuk who he is today, and now he has become a person who cannot live an ordinary life. Roman. With his new name, he had no intention of hiding himself at all. For this incident, only a little explanation was needed. Based on the information he had heard from Hans, Roman gave an answer that people could understand with common sense. Actually, I was doing swordsmanship training separately. Why were you hiding that? If you had told me, as your father, I would definitely have given you full support. I know. However, there was a time when I was distracted and wandered aimlessly, so I could not confidently ask for something from my father. People called me Dimitri's fool. For my own greed, I wanted to show you that I could do certain things on my own, and although I was self-taught, I would be able to reach a certain level. It was an ambiguous answer. Are you saying you learned swordsmanship by yourself? Given that Roman had the power to deal with blood feng with his swordsmanship, the question was not quickly resolved. How did you deal with blood feng? According to my research, I found out that blood feng was not a group whose members had strong trust in each other. Intimidation and conciliation that started. From the bonds formed a small organization, and a small number of leaders took full control of that organization. It was like a sand castle, and most of the members were scoundrels. I thought that cutting off its head would destroy it at once, so I lured them with a bait and attacked Ben Miles directly. Ben Miles? You mean you lured him in? Yes. Blood feng has shown a clear pattern of behavior in the past. A powerful noble family kept their notoriety by keeping their mouths shut when they touched a member of the gang, and by always retaliating for friction with a noble aristocrat. It's a bit embarrassing to say, but I'm called Dimitri's fool. I was sure they would come after me. So I used myself as bait, and when the troops were dispersed, I attacked Ben Miles and cut off the head of the group. It was a very risky plan. If they had decided to take revenge, they would have given up on Ben Miles and tried to kill you anyway. His heart sank. Roman's plan. It was extremely dangerous. Baron Romero's eyebrows trembled at the fact that his son had made and executed it. Roman said, as father said, it was a risky plan. So, if father could grasp my actions, I thought that the Dimitri Knights would move. And such information must have been delivered directly to the Blood Feng's leader. Now, I ask you, father. If you were a member of the Blood Feng with no idea when the Dimitri Knights would arrive, would you risk your life to rescue the leader, Ben Miles? The premise of my plan was that they were sandcastles. There is no reason for them to risk their lives when they became a gang member through intimidation and pressure if they could regain their freedom by simply ignoring their leader's death. The explanation was similar to reality. Roman had attacked Blood Feng. There was no inducement, and after slaughtering all the enemies that filled the space, he secured Ben Miles, who was about to run away. Subsequently, the members of Blood Feng abandoned Ben Miles. As Roman explained, in a situation where the gang members did not know when the Dimitri Knights would arrive, they couldn't delay themselves any longer. Some of the explanation was true, but most of it was a lie. Roman solved the situation with common sense. The fact that Dimitri's fool killed Blood Feng with pure force does not end with revealing himself but may raise suspicions about his existence. So he gave a realistic answer. It seemed plausible that he caught the leader himself, and he did not deny the fact that he had done it himself. The explanation is over. Baron Romero, who questioned it over and over, as if in disbelief, was unable to speak for a while. Son. He was thrilled. Roman. The sore thumb. The son he thought couldn't do anything had executed such a plan flawlessly. Baron Romero had never given up on his son. This feeling in his heart and his action of even striking his son across his face revealed Baron Romeo's true feelings. You did a really great job. My son has done what no one else in this land has been able to do. Is it because of excitement? He wanted to see his son's transformation for himself. Can I ask for something? Yes. I want to check your swordsmanship skills. How my son has changed, what kind of sword he used to deal with Blood Feng. Knights Commander, Jonathan, can you? Prepare a duel right now? That is possible. The gaze turned to Roman again. A father's heart. Roman understood it. A son who is called a fool has accomplished something, and he must, of course, want to see it for himself. Roman nodded. I understand. A new life. Roman was faithful to his new reality. Chapter 11. Change. Part 4. The Knights' Training Ground. The knights, who had been training for a long time, bowed to show respect to the people who visited them. Clack clack. We greet the Lord. We greet the Lord. The Dmitri family. In terms of the entire kingdom of Cairo, it was only a small estate on the outskirts, but the status of the Dmitri family within the estate was tremendous. In particular, the respect received from the Dmitri knights was the highest in the area. The respect for Baron Romero in their hearts could be understood just by looking at the knights who formed the ranks in perfect harmony. The knight's commander, Jonathan, came forward and announced, "Today, we are going to conduct a swordsmanship battle with young Master Roman. Those who wish to duel with him should come forward." There were no volunteers. Jonathan's words were so sudden that the knights glanced at each other with puzzled expressions. It was, of course, natural. The opponent was Roman Dmitri. They wouldn't gain anything even if they won, and if they lost, they would need to worry about being kicked out from the Dmitri knights. Aside from their respect for Baron Romero, they didn't want to be a puppet in Roman's banter. If there are no volunteers, I will choose young Master Roman's opponent myself. Jonathan's eyes scanned through the knights. Excluding Jonathan, the Dmitri knights consisted of 15 people. They were called knights, but including Jonathan, only 2 people had actually received a knighthood. The remaining 14 were, on paper, commoners. Of course, they all hoped for a knighthood, but their skills were still lacking in many areas. The problem was the current situation. If it were the old Roman, it would be okay to call anyone and get it over with. However, now that Roman had changed, he could not be evaluated easily. I can't let the Lord see the Dmitri knights being easily defeated by the young master. Therefore, the young master's opponent must be a strong person who can completely subdue him. Only then will we be able to preserve the prestige of the Dmitri knights and prove the true skill of young Master Roman, who subjugated the blood Fong. In fact, he wanted to go out and test his skills himself. However, the knight's commander, Jonathan, was not in a position to draw a sword recklessly. Therefore, he had no choice but to swallow his regret. He made his decision. From the time he accepted Baron Romero's proposal, he had already decided who Roman's opponent would be. "Chris, come forward." "Me?" Chris was called. The blonde, handsome man distorted his expression at Jonathan's call. "Chris." He doubted his ears. He's not just any ordinary knight, to think the commander would call on the vice leader of the knights. I don't think it's something I should do. Insubordination was an extremely serious issue. Normally, he would have obeyed the commander's orders without any complaints, but he couldn't accept them this time. The reason was simple. It was because the opponent was Roman. Even Chris, who truly loved Dimitri's people, hated him. Only if he wasn't Lord Dimitri's son. A long time ago, Chris had gotten into an incident involving Roman. A violent incident broke out in the nighttime, and the cause of it was Roman Dmitri. Roman was making a fuss while drunk, and being Dimitri's eldest son meant no one could touch him. When other people were waiting idly, Chris, who was on patrol with the guards, discovered the scene. He needed to solve the problem of the territory, and while he was courting Roman with a respectful attitude, he suddenly got a hot shock on his cheek. Slap. He had been slapped suddenly. Seeing Roman screaming at him while asking how he dared to touch his body, he genuinely felt the urge to kill him. However, he had to suppress it. Roman Dmitri. He was, without a doubt, an asshole. However, he was also a man who had the surname of Dmitri. Chris showed utmost patience and solved the case safely, but from then on, he hated Roman Dmitri enough to get goosebumps whenever someone talked about him. Moreover, even the knight's commander, Jonathan, didn't know about it. Intrinsically, he thought he would be excluded from the competition, but a voice of protest inevitably came out when the commander chose him. Jonathan said, "Young Master Roman is a person who is strong enough to defeat the Blood Fang by himself. In order to compete on an equal footing, a competent person must come forward, and the person who can represent the Dimitri Knights is you, Chris." This Blood Fang incident, Chris. Jonathan's expression hardened. Chris understood that it meant he would not take no for an answer. He bowed his head. "Damn it. I understand." With the Blood Fang incident, Roman's actions became famous even among the knights. There was even a debate about whether Roman possessed such great strength that he could have dealt with Blood Fang alone. However, Chris adamantly rejected that. Didn't he know from his own experience? "I was slapped in the face by Roman just 2 years ago. Back then, I realized that was the strength of an ordinary person who had never trained with a sword. Win or lose? I am not worried about that. However, I want to teach him a proper lesson since I got the opportunity. I have some conditions." "What are they?" "I was taught to always fight as if my life was on the line. No matter who my opponent is, I have no intention of going easy on them, even if it's just a spar. If you allow this, I will accept the honor of sparring with young Master Roman Dimitri." Glance. Jonathan's gaze shifted toward Baron Romero. As he nodded, Jonathan confirmed his will. "But... you're laughing?" Roman just laughed. It was obvious that it meant he was fine with those conditions. His reaction made Chris even more angry. Chris wasn't dumb. He knew Roman was Lord Dimitri's son. He had no intention of destroying him horribly in front of the lord he served. But, seeing him laugh, he forgot all reason. This bastard. A blond, handsome man. Contrary to his appearance that looked like he couldn't even wield a sword properly, he was called Dimitri's fighting dog. It meant he was a man who always finished the fights he started. People were worried about Roman fighting against such a powerful opponent. 2 men faced each other at the training ground, holding wooden swords. "Finally, I will get to teach him a lesson." Tap. Start. The spar began. Chris, who had been waiting for the signal with his hands and legs twitching, immediately slammed them into the ground at Jonathan's signal. Tap tap. "I'll show you the difference in our level." It was at an incredible speed. Chris closed the distance with Roman in an instant, and in the blink of an eye of the onlookers, he swung his sword toward Roman's forearm. Fortunately, it was an attack that avoided a vital point. Thinking that Roman would not be able to stop such a sudden and quick attack, he made a rational decision to choose a part that would not cause a problem even if he was injured. However, clack, clack, he suddenly felt an opposing force in his hands. Roman and Chris' gazes intertwined in the air. At the sight of Roman, who did not even blink despite the surprise attack, Chris got goosebumps for a moment. Swish. Swoosh. Chris made a quick recovery and consequently made an attack that swung toward Roman horizontally. However, Roman calmly blocked the attack this time as well. The block this time was certainly not a coincidence. From the force transmitted through his hand, he understood the defense posture of Roman was quite stable. What is this? It was unexpected. I didn't know that Roman knew the basics of swordsmanship. I never believed it was Roman who actually subjugated Blood Fang. Chris knew that if that was true, it would mean Roman was as powerful as Jonathan. However, now that he faced him in a fight, it didn't matter anymore. The spar had already begun. Chris felt that his anger would only be relieved by defeating Roman. Clack clack. Tap tap tap. While taking aggressive steps, he continuously swung down attacks from above. Those who were watching the fast and powerful combo attack burst into an exclamation, and Roman stepped back while urgently blocking the attacks. His defense was undoubtedly good. However, the moment Roman took the 5th step back, Chris' eyes suddenly lit up. Now. Swoosh. The final blow. He attacked the gap Roman showed for an instant. He was sure the attack would work this time, however, the wooden sword only slashed through Roman's hair. Whoosh! His hair blew in the wind. Aside from that, only Roman's cold eyes could be seen. Chris didn't know why, but even though he could properly grasp Roman's movements with the naked eye, he instinctively swung his sword to block him. Clack! How? Suddenly, Roman was right in front of him. Roman's sword quickly swung toward Chris' head. It was a powerful attack that would have ended the match if it had not been blocked. Chris now understood that Roman was not only good at defense. His attacking basics were excellent, too, and as soon as the attack was blocked, he disappeared from Chris' view. He sidestepped out of Chris' sight as if he was flowing water. Then, he swung his wooden sword from bottom to top. Chris caught his breath at the abnormal attack. Cook! Swoosh! He was stunned. Is this Roman's skill? He couldn't believe it even though he saw it with his own eyes. This feels like shit. He clenched his teeth. He didn't want to lose. It was unacceptable to be defeated by none other than Dimitri's fool in front of other people. I will wait for the perfect time. While counterattacking, Roman always aimed at Chris' gaps. It was then. Shwoop! A wide-open chest. Roman's actions were large. Chris took his first step to counter him, thinking now was the right time. Smirk. Roman smiled. Chris instinctively knew. This is a trap. This is dangerous. Seeing Roman casually dodging his attack and immediately counterattacking, Chris instinctively released his suppressed power. Slam. Kuryung. Explosions occurred inside his body. It was the manifestation of the aura. What differentiated Chris from ordinary knights was his one-star aura. It was the power that made humans superhuman. As Chris released his aura, Jonathan, who was watching, widened his eyes. Don't do it. It was too dangerous. The clash of aura and wooden swords. The result is obvious. Not only will the wooden sword be shattered, but also, you don't know what injuries Roman will face in the aftermath of that power. The fact that it's not an actual sword doesn't matter. The power of aura enables the user to cut through people with just a wooden sword. His heart was pounding. This was a mistake. If he had known that Roman was no match for Chris, he would have given up and dueled with Roman himself. However, just then. Step. Roman leaped toward Chris. Even in the face of a blow aimed at his life, he did not hesitate to move forward. Just one step caused a miracle. Roman's face was slightly cut, some blood splattered, and he attacked Chris, who was stained with embarrassment and astonishment. The fight was over. He had disarmed Chris. Chris would have fought back if he still held his sword, but he couldn't make any excuses now. His defeat was as clear as crystal. However, Roman didn't let things pass just like that. Those who show hostility must be eliminated. It was the rule of Baek Jung-hyuk, the heavenly demon. Even if he didn't kill him, he had to pay the price for making Roman fight with his life on the line. Swing. Crack. Cook. The wooden sword exploded in his face. Chris, who was hit with the sudden blow, rose to his feet. He noticed his face was splattered with warm blood, and a few teeth were scattered on the ground. Many people often said that Chris, who was a disciple of Jonathan, a 3-star knight, was Dimitri's greatest genius since he developed the 2-star aura at a young age. He was later evaluated as a talent who would rise beyond Dimitri to earn fame in the Kingdom of Cairo. Even in Dimitri, it was clearly visible that there was no one who could match him other than Jonathan. And someone like that suddenly fell backward. The dilated pupil clearly showed that he had lost consciousness. Flop. Chris had been knocked out. And then. What in the world? Jonathan's expression was stained with astonishment.